Welcome. What we're going to do in today's lesson is we're going to have a look at music notation, just the pitches in today's lesson, so we're not going to be looking at the rhythms, and we're going to find out how things are working and some of the broader concepts going on. To begin with, you'll see a sign on the left-hand side over here. This has two names. It can either be called the treble clef, which means the high key. The other thing that it can be called, which is what we're going to be looking into today, is the G key. So G just meaning the letter G. At first glance, you might be thinking it doesn't look like the letter G as you know it currently. It's C and much more swirly, I suppose, is one way of describing it. The reason for this is that when music was written originally, it was written with quills. As it was written, we started writing music back in the 13th and 14th centuries. You would dip your quill into ink, and that's why little splatters or little marks are still on the printed form. Because it is ink that you're using, unlike a biro where we can be much more exact with the ink, using a pen, we have to swirl the ink like this, keeping it on the page, and lifting off our quill at that point, and that creates that little dot. So if we look down here on the left-hand side, you'll be able to see that it is a G with a little bit of backing and a little mark on the top there. Now, what it's doing is it's focusing in on this line here, that second line. We've got 5 lines in the staff, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the second line is the line that is targeted by the G. So if I follow the line along, I get to this note here, which is the note G. Again, G because it's signified by the G clef over here. And then we get into how music is actually set up. As I follow down the way from the G, G comes down to F. It comes down to an F because it's F is the note before G in the alphabet. G down to F, and of course down to E, because E is before F in the alphabet. D is before E, and the lowest note here, so we're starting to run out of space on the staff, and I've got to fall off the staff and create one little line through here. That line is called a ledger line. A ledger, accountants will tell you, is something that you write on or something which is written in by yourself. Therefore, a ledger line is put through this note here, making it the lowest note in the treble clef or the G clef. It is the note C. I should really just call it the G clef consistently throughout this video, actually. G, F, down to E, down to D, and finally down to C. Going up the way, the note that comes after G in the alphabet, in the musical alphabet, is A. There are 7 colors in the rainbow. That's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And in music, there are 7 notes. I suppose the musical equivalent of the alphabet. The musical equivalent of the rainbow, sorry. That's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And in the same way that the rainbow goes back to red again, the musical alphabet after G goes back to A again. So we have C, D, E, F, G, just like the alphabet. After G, we go A, B, and then C. So what we have here is we have the notes of C through to C, C, D, E, F. There's your G on the second line. After the G comes A, B, C. Now, there's a story about how the music not began, but how it very much changed in history. Pythagoras, who is a mathematician famous for some of the things you may have done in school, Pythagoras was walking past a blacksmith shop, and he heard the hammer hitting metal. And as it hits metal, you would hear the tone of it hitting the metal, and uh, shortly after the hammer hits the metal, you'd hear an overtone, you'd hear another tone. Pythagoras was interested to find out if there was a relationship between a note being struck and another note coming over the top of it. And the answer to that is yes, there is a difference. There is always a 5-note difference. There's a 5-note relationship between the note being struck and the other note that you'd hear. So in this instance, C, 5 notes up from that, C, D, E, F, G. There's a relationship between C and G. Now, I'm looking for something on my screen here. For a start, the software that I'm using here is an online software. It's called Noteflight. It's fairly effective, and you may want to use it. What I'm going to add into this video is just a little bit of use of Noteflight. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to add in instruments. And you can see that if I pull up instruments here, I can just go to click in Add Instrument. And what I'm going to do as we're walking through the reading of notation, I have to explain the next bit, which is that C and G have a relationship. This new note that I've added in here, this new clef that I've added in here, is centered on C. So in the same way that this letter here, which starts in the second line of the treble clef, this one is G, and therefore when we know where the G is, we can count around it. In this case, we're going to start on a C. So I've marked in the C here, but actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste exactly the same notes and place them on here. Actually, let's delete this just to prove it to you. Click somewhere in the bar, click Control V for for paste, obviously, and you do in fact start on the center line. So this note up here is a C, and this note down here is also, it's the same C. It's exactly the same C. It's in the middle of this staff here. So in the same way that this goes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, here are exactly the same notes. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And there's a relationship here. Here's the C, and here's the G. 5 notes of difference. Now, you're not likely to, I mean, unless you're a viola player, and much later on in composition, you're not likely to use this clef. I'm using this in this lesson to introduce the next clef, which you're definitely going to use. I say definitely. If you're a piano player, you're going to use it. If you are any sort of bass player, you're going to use it. Fair enough. If you're only going to use treble, like if you're a flautist or a guitarist, then you might not. But it's always helpful to use it. I'm going to click Control V, so I'm going to paste in the same notes. That's not massively useful. Remember those ledger lines that I mentioned earlier on? That's a lot of ledger lines here. So Control down, and that's much more readable, which is why we have these different staves, is to make music much more readable. I've copied the same notes. This is a C, this is a C, and this is a C. Now, why is this one a C? Because of this letter over here. Remember I said that Pythagoras discovered that there's a relationship in fifths. So C and G are related. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Also, C and F are related. F, G, A, B, C. Remember that was a G. That's going to be an F. It's one down. F, G, A, B, C. Here's your G. Count down 5, you get to the C. Here's your C. Count down 5, and you get to the letter F. It's a quill that was used to write the F, so we've got our mark as the ink hits the page, swirling around because we can't make jagged lines with ink like that. And rather than making two lines across like we would use for an F now if we were using a biro, they had to just you do two dots. And because if we tried to do lines with ink, it's worth you trying that with a calligraphy pen just to find out how difficult it is. You'll find that the ink goes everywhere. So two little dots here suffices to make this into an F. Here's the line here. The F clef centers around the second top line instead of the second bottom line, which the G clef does. The G clef centers around the second bottom line, and the F clef second top. So here's my F, here's my E, here's my D, and I did click Control Paste, so I shouldn't need to prove this to you, but just to prove it to you, there's a D, and there's my C. C, D, E, F, G. After G comes A, B, C. And something interesting happens here. The C is one ledger line up in the same way that it was one ledger line down here. And out of interest, here's the same C in the middle of the viola clef. Now, why am I mentioning the word middle? Now I can see that I have a piano already on the score, but as I click on Add Instruments and go on to piano, I don't know if it's going to let me do that. I think what it's thinking is that I have a bass clef on here. I'm going to try something a little bit tricky.